and welcome to the MyClayCo studio. I am Tegan and today I'm going to be taking you through some marbling techniques with polymer clay. Now, marbling is such a great, simple technique that you can do that really gives you great results. So I wanted to show you a couple of different types today. So one of them is going to be a more blended kind of marbling, and the other one is going to be one where the colors stay a bit more separated. So we'll have a look at the blending one first. I'm going to show you two techniques for this. Let's not waste any time and get straight into it. As I mentioned, marbling is quite a simple technique that you can use, but there is one thing that you really need to remember, particularly when you're doing these blended kind of techniques, and that is color. So you need to think, what is going to happen when these colors meet and kind of blend together? I'll give you an example. If you were perhaps to say do something a bit festive and you used a red and a green, they may look great side by side, but if you do a marbling technique with them when they're going to blend together, you might find that where that green and that red meet, that you end up with this kind of muddy brown color, which might not be ideal. Now, if you're not confident with putting color combinations together, I definitely recommend that you watch our other video on color theory for polymer clay after this. But there are three things that you can do to get around this kind of issue of colors that aren't really friends blending together. So one of the options you have is that you can use a different type of marbling technique, not this blended one, a different one I want to show you later in the video. The other options that you've got are change the colors that you're using. But the third thing you could do is add a little buffer in there. So this could be something like white or translucent, or even like a goldy color that might just soften that blend of colors there. And it means you won't end up with that kind of brown, murky kind of color. You'll get a nice blended, even color palette. So I'm going to jump into one of these techniques. Now, this is the technique that I call the snake marbling technique, because essentially what we're going to do is roll all of our colors into snakes, and then we're going to be twisting and turning them together to see what kind of marble we can come up with. Now, the colors that I will be using, I have Sculpey Gold, I have Sculpey Blush, Sculpey Mauve, Sculpey Ballet, and Sculpey Lilac Mist. And there are a mix of Primo and Souffle colors in there, which is totally fine. They have the same baking temperature. So I have my pre-conditioned clay here. And our job now is just to roll these up into snakes. So this one might need a little bit more conditioning. So we're just going to roll this into a bit of a snake kind of shape. Now, when you're choosing your colors, you can have as many as you like. So I've gone 5 different colors today. If you wanted to, you can do, you could go crazy and do more than this, but you can also go less. As long as you've got at least 2 colors there, it's fine. The other thing that you do need to think about is how thin or thick you're rolling your snakes, because obviously if you have the thicker pieces, you will get more concentrated of that color. So I really want this gold just to be kind of thin strands that go through this. And I'm very sorry if the camera's wobbling around a little bit. Okay, now it doesn't matter with your snakes that you've got here. It really doesn't matter if you don't have an even thickness throughout. That'll just add to the marbliness of it. And I'm just going to slice this one as well, because we kind of want them at an even length. I'll just chop off some of these. Really thinking I want the gold even thinner than this. So I think we're definitely not going to be using all of it. Right, we have all of our pieces ready to go. Okay, so let's start with our lilac mist piece here. Well, they're really not even, are they? I mean, look, it doesn't totally matter if they're not 100% even. But the more even they are, the more of it you will end up with the marbled effect. So I'm going to put one of these darker snakes in here, and then I might pop a little gold one in there like that. Then we might put, let's pop the light, that ballet pink next to the darker one, and then pop another dark one on that side there. And we'll pop another gold one in here. What do we have on this side? All right, I think we need another gold one in here, and maybe dark one in there, another gold in here. How are we looking? And I think that darker one will go there nicely. All right, so we are just going to roll this up a little bit so they can start merging together. And we want to make sure that they are completely squished together, all of these snakes, so that we don't have any air pockets in there. So I normally give it a bit of a squeeze first before we give it a bit of a roll. All right, now we're coming together. And you can see here, we're already starting to see that beautiful mix of colors coming together. Okay, so we are now ready to start giving this a bit of a twist. Just have a look at that. Oh, it's beautiful. Looks good just like that. And we are then going to twist them up together. Now, I like to give it a really good twist so that I get quite significant marbling in there. But obviously, if you did twist it less, you would end up getting less of the marbling. The other thing I'm just going to be really conscious of, if you see here, I've got my gold lining up, which I don't want. I want it to be a bit more marbly than that. So I'm going to try and get my gold not to line up like that. You want to offset them. So you see with marbling, it kind of looks like on the surface that you're just squishing clay together, but there is a little bit more to it, and you do have to think a little bit about it. Okay, so this is where you need to make a decision. Are you happy with how the marbling is looking, or do you want to twist it a little bit more and get those colors to blend in a little bit more? So I'm thinking that I'm kind of liking how this is looking. Ooh, I'm actually liking the backside a lot too. But I do want to give it a little bit more of a marble, so I am just going to twist it again. And we want some of these other colors in here. And you can pick which side you kind of prefer better, and then you can go from there. But I think that marbliness is looking pretty good. So from here, you can then roll out your clay. So I've got a couple of depth guides here so that we can make sure that we've got an even thickness on it. Oh, it's looking beautiful. Now, I'm really happy with the marbliness going on up here, but down here we're not getting anything really exciting happening. So what I'm actually going to do is turn this around, because I think this is looking a bit cooler on this side. We might put that in there. That in there. There we go. And you can, again, have a look at each side and think which one are you liking more. And you can roll with that one. Now, I am going to cheat a little bit and I am going to go pop this through the pasta machine so that we can get this done quicker and get it nice and flat. Okay, so we have a gorgeous sheet of marbled clay here. And I'm just going to pop it down there and we will switch these out. And I've got my 2mm ones here. So, and I'm just going to roll this onto my surface. And this will burnish my clay to the tile, which essentially means that it will stick to my tile and not in my cutters. So I have a few different cutter options here that we're going to use for this one. And I did have a look before I picked them out just to see what kind of cutters would look good with this. So we'll start with this one. I really like this one for marbling just because it's got such a big area, so you'll be able to pick up all of the colors in there. Always a tough decision where to actually cut, because I like to get all of the same colors in the 2 pairs of earrings that I stamp out. So I just want to make sure, I might actually go at a bit of an angle here, and then I'll be able to get that same kind of color wave going through it. Okay, so we'll now just peel this up, and don't worry about all of this excess clay here. We can either twist it again together to marble it, or we can mix it all to make another color. It will definitely get used. So I'll just give you a bit of a look at how they've turned out. I love them. They've got a bit of a retro vibe to them. All right, so we will now get them into the oven, and I am going to show you a second technique. So I'm going to take you through a second technique for doing those kind of blended marbling, and this one we're going to have a bit more of a neutral palette. I'm a big fan of neutrals just because they tend to go with everything in your wardrobe, so I find myself wearing a lot of neutral earrings. So I always like making neutral earrings because I know that I'm going to get some good wear out of them. The colors that I do have today, I have Cernit Translucent here. I also have Cernit Pearl White, and I've got Cernit Metallic Champagne. So I'm hoping that these create a really nice neutral color palette. Now, as I said, I'm going to be showing you a bit more of that blended marble, but this is a totally different technique. So what I'm going to do is just use my square cutter here, and I'm just going to cut out a bunch of each of these colors. Now, you don't have to be neat with these squares because we're actually going to be placing them on top of each other to create this marble effect. I am just going to grab a baby wipe to give this a bit of a wipe down. Okay, now you will notice that I've got a bit more translucent here than I do the other 2 colors, and that is because the last time that I did this I really felt like it would have looked better if I had more translucent there, breaking it up. So I am going to put more layers of translucent in. And I'm just going to put a layer of translucent in between each of these. And hopefully I don't get confused between the pearl white and the translucent. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's all going to get put together and marbled. I might just put this under here, this under here, and we're all good. All right, so that was very wonky, wasn't it? So I'm just going to press these together now. And we can use our clay press. And I just want to make sure that they are all squished in tight. Because what we are going to do in a moment is we are going to grab our tissue blade and we're actually going to cut away so that we can create that marble effect. So let's get to it. As you can see, we've already got a few layers happening here. And quick tip for this, if you just squish this down so it's kind of stuck to your tile here, you will find that you get less slipping and sliding around while you're doing this, which is helpful. And in a moment, we'll place all of the bits down so you will be able to choose where you actually spread out these the pieces so that you can get a good mix. The tricky job I've made for myself here is that I don't know where the white pearl starts and the translucent ends, but it is going to look beautiful once it's baked. So I think we'll be happy with how it ends up. All right, so I'm just going to start placing bits down together, and I just want to make sure that I've got a bit of a mix so that we get a really nice marbled effect. And we will just roll this so we can combine it together a little. And I will once again make light work of this for myself. I'm going to go run it through the pasta machine. So I have our neutral marbled piece out of the pasta machine and it looks great. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of pink clay still in there, so we've picked up a little bit there, but that's okay. We will just avoid that bit. And I'm just going to get my depth guides again, and we're going to burnish this to the tile, and we are then going to cut some pieces out. Okay, get these out the way. We will peel this back. Okay, let's get these in the oven. So I'm going to show you a different kind of marbling technique now that will give you a bit more of a faux stone effect rather than the other blended effect that we've done with the previous two techniques. So let's get into it. So I've got my translucent here and it's kind of partially conditioned. And what we are going to be doing is I'm just going to be slicing it into 3 pieces, and then we're going to be adding some of this sea glass pigment powder to it. So, and the reason why I want to separate it into 3 pieces is that we're going to be doing 3 different shades of the sea glass, and that is what is going to give us our marble effect. Now I want one of these to be quite pale and another one to be medium and the other to be dark. We'll just see what colors we come up with these, and we can always add more pigment powder if we want to. Now, when you are coloring translucent clays, you can use pigment powder like I have. Some people like to use alcohol ink, however, they can fade over time, so pigment powder is my preference. The other option that you do have though, if you don't have pigment powder or mica powder or alcohol ink, you can also just use a tiny bit of clay. So you have to be careful when you are using clay though, because it does make it opaque quite quickly, so just use a tiny bit. So I'm just going to get these started, and then I will go and run them through our pasta machine so we can speed it up a little bit. So I have a pigmented translucent clay fresh out of the pasta machine. Now this one, because I did want quite a bit of contrast, I have actually added a little bit more of that pigment powder to that one. The rest of them were just as I had put them in at the start. So now what we are going to do, we are just going to actually chop all of these up. So just want it into little pieces like this. They can just be a rough chop. You don't need to be a perfectionist with this one. And we are then just going to peel these up and combine them all together. And the goal is that we want to try and get them mixed in nicely. Okay, now that that's done, we are actually going to add just a little bit of gold leaf to it. And this will just give that extra bit of pizzazz and a bit more of that kind of marbled effect. So I'm just going to pop one sheet on. Yes, we're going to need a second. Generally, I find for this amount of clay that 2 sheets is a good amount. And just combine that all together. Now you will sometimes see when people do this technique that they put some liquid clay or liquid Sculpey over it, and that is just so it can help it bind better. So mine feels like it's binding fine, so I'm not going to add any today. But if you're doing, there is another version where you use acrylic paint. If you are doing that version, I would definitely be adding in your liquid clay to make it bind better. Right, so I am now just forming this into a bit of a log, and then we are going to slice it up. You want to make sure that you have pressed it down firmly and then it's all combined, because otherwise you're going to end up with little holes and air pockets in the middle there. Okay. I'll give you a little look at what we've ended up with, and you can see already that we've got this beautiful marbled effect going through there. So I'm just going to give my bench, my tile, a little bit of a wipe here again. Get off all of these little stray bits. Okay, let's slice this up. Ooh, let's have a look at this. So now I will just slice the rest of the pieces, trying to make them a bit of a uniform thickness. I'm just going to pop that there as my guide. So now all we're going to do is we're just going to lay all these pieces flat, and you just kind of want to lay them so that your marbling goes where you want it to go. So when I'm laying these down, I do just try and overlap them a little bit, otherwise you will end up with gaps, which we don't want. Worst case scenario, if you do have little gaps, it's fine because you basically just cut your earring shapes around it, but I try and avoid it where possible. Okay, so I'll just give you a bit of a look at what this has turned into. And from here, what I am going to do is just go run this through the pasta machine so I can turn it into a flat piece. Now, if you don't have a pasta machine, that is totally fine. In all these instances, you can just roll it out with your roller. But I just like to take the quick, easy option. I'll be back. So I have my gorgeous piece of marbled clay here, and I'm actually just going to slice this in half. And take these two, because I'm actually going to be using these bezels on here. So let's just get our clay burnished. And I am then just going to use this so that we can get a really sharp edge on them. So I'm actually going to do it there so we can get them all even. So much for making them all even, best laid plans and all that. It's fine. Right, and then we just get our bezels, and what I want to do is just kind of lay them on there halfway. Oh, they look about even. Now there's two ways that you can embed the bezels. You can either roll over it with your roller, or you can use the acrylic clay press. So I'm just going to roll these in here. Might actually use this one. And we do also have a full tutorial on embedding bezels and charms on our YouTube if you do want to check that out. And then we have to work out what to do with the rest of this. So I'm just going to cut out these bezels. Now, if you don't have cutters for these, you can just use a craft knife to cut around them. I obviously just find a cutter easier. And if they pop out, it doesn't matter, because with bezels and charms, you need to secure them afterwards. So I think I'm going to be popping a little resin over the top of these, and we'll cut out the rest of our pieces. Now I'll go get these popped in the oven, and we will come back and have a look at the earrings that they've made. Thank you so much for tuning in today and watching our video on marbling techniques. I hope that you've enjoyed watching them all, and I would love to know in the comments which one was your favorite technique and which pair of earrings was your favorite. So let us know. If you have enjoyed the video, we would also love you to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.